Is bullying rampant within Parliament and facilitated by those who are meant to be tasked with helping victims? It's a bold claim, which began with backbench MP Govt Sharma. In response to denials by senior members of the Labour Party, Sharma posted new allegations over the weekend, naming former and current Labour Party whips Kieran McAnulty and Duncan Webb, and saying he took his concerns to the Prime Minister's office. In a separate claim, another parliamentary staffer has made allegations against Labour MP Anna Lorck. Important, very important to point out, as yet, all of this is as yet unsubstantiated. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern joins us this morning for more on this. Morena, Prime Minister.
Morena.
How many Labour MPs are currently under review for bullying allegations?
Well, here I would say that with 237 staff and the employment of MPs, I won't be necessarily familiar if there is an issue raised with any of those 230 staff. What I, however, am very clear on is that we have to have processes that make sure that we protect and work through issues that staff members raise, should they raise them. And just to then come back to the reason that we are even having this conversation, ultimately what gave rise to Govt raising issues is that we identified, because staff raised it, issues with his management within his office, and interventions were made by the whips and parliamentary service which he disagreed with. So that is actually the very reason that this has occurred in the first place, is because we do work very hard to make sure that we have a good working environment for all those who are here in Parliament.
Okay, we'll come back to the employment matters soon, but 4 MPs have allegations of bullying against them. That's Govt Sharma, Kieran McAnulty, Duncan Webb, Anna Lorck. Serious allegations
of bullying.
How many of them are under review?
So just to be really clear here, we have for Anna, we have a staff member who has raised issues. We have a process now that goes through, and so that's why we haven't got into any detail around that, because we do have a way with parliamentary services for that to be properly looked at. So we want to make sure that we do that properly. The issues that you've raised here, Govt has raised his concerns and views on the interventions that were made when staff, and you've seen this now, some of the staff have spoken about this, when staff raised issues around his management style and his management of his office. So it is our whip's job to intervene to make sure that they are offered, for instance, professional coaching, professional supervision, training to ensure that other staff members who may be in their employment don't experience those same issues. That is their job, and as a result of the Francis review, it's our job to make sure that we do respond when staff raise issues. Now, Govt has not always agreed or appreciated those interventions, and that has ultimately given rise to what we're seeing.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is that there is an employment matter, which is what you're discussing, but there is also allegations of bullying. There is also allegations of bullying, more than one allegation of bullying too. The allegations are, just to run through some of them, and unsubstantiated, I will point out, that Kieran McAnulty gaslit him, shouted at him, degraded him in front of caucus members, asked him to go to a meeting at his office with staff when McAnulty was not there, that current whip Duncan Webb told Sharma to keep quiet about an allegation of misuse of taxpayer money because, quote, the party comes first and foremost before the country. Aren't all of these allegations at least worthy of looking into?
So as you've raised, and I think caveated in this interview, as yet unsubstantiated, let me pull out one of those, the accusation of the misuse of taxpayer money. Now, we take such claims very seriously. Govt raised that issue directly with parliamentary services, and the issue was that he believed a staff member had travelled inappropriately with an MP. So he raised it with parliamentary services, who are in charge of making sure the rules are followed. They found that it was not inappropriate. Parliamentarians across the House will know that that is not unusual for particularly a staff member based in Wellington when they're first joining a team to go and meet the local office staff that they'll work with day to day. So they found that to not be an issue. Again, despite that having been looked in, you see that Govt is continuing to raise that issue. So that's just an example here. Look, with issues such as this, we will always look to refine our processes. We will always look to reflect on the way that we are conducting ourselves, because we do have to be to the highest standard.
Okay, so if you are looking into those issues, then does that mean you're going?
Because they are in charge.
Does that mean you are going to stand down these ministers in question while you carry out that review, just as the National Party have stood down Sam Uffindale while they look into allegations?
Because if I may, this comes back to the fact that there were accusations made by staff members around the conduct of an MP. The whips and parliamentary services intervened, because this was not just one case, there was more than one case. So it gave them grounds for intervention. The MP has not agreed with those interventions. I've seen nothing to substantiate the claims that are being made against those MPs in the way that they have intervened.
But you have seen nothing because there has been no review. You haven't even entertained the idea that that may have happened.
Well, I have gone through the documentation that exists around these issues, for instance, because, of course, as you can imagine, there's timelines and notes and annotations taken of all these interactions. This has been going on for some time, and probably what's also worth pointing out is that at no point did Govt raise these directly with me, even though I'm the leader of the Labour Party.
Okay, he did say that he went to your office in December 2021, and he says, I very clearly said Karen McAnulty was a bully. So are you saying that your office didn't tell you?
No, at that point, as I've already said, I was aware of it in December. Govt never raised it directly with me. A staff member at that time did raise that he had concerns, but also raised that staff had made complaints about him. I was clear that we needed to find a resolution that protected staff and ensured that we were doing our bit to ensure that we have a safe working environment for staff members. At that point, a resolution was reached. I heard nothing further of it until I saw the Herald article.
Okay, but you knew about Govt's concerns in December.
I also at that point knew that there were multiple concerns about him.
But you knew that he had accused other MPs of bullying as well at that point.
No, Melissa, this is not new information. I said that I had these issues raised with me in December of last year.
So why didn't you carry out a review then?
Because a resolution was found that satisfied all parties, and our office, for instance, didn't have those issues raised.
Clearly.
If I may, this was in December of last year. A resolution was found. It wasn't raised again between the intervening period of December and August with our office. What did occur in between times is further issues with staff members. Here, I think it is important to remember, at the core of this was management issues in his office. I place great priority on making sure we look after the people who work for us. If an MP doesn't take kindly to those interventions, we'll seek to work those through, but that's very different from being able to substantiate that you have been bullied.
Yes, and in response to the Francis review, you did put out a statement at the time saying, you know, it's my expectation we treat one another with dignity and respect. You said at that time that where those instances happen, that they do need to be raised with you, as you say. In terms of the structure...
And as I say, unfortunately, this one was never directly raised with me.
Didn't you say it was raised with you in December?
Final point worth making. So, no, he raised it with a staff member of mine. He's never ever spoken to me directly about these issues.
But it was passed on to you.
Yes, and as I say, that was the only time, 8 months ago, and at that point, a resolution, as far as we were all concerned, a resolution was found.
In terms of, Prime Minister, if I can just ask, in terms of the structure and in terms of bullying allegations, isn't it a core Labour Party value that the elite and powerful don't wield control over people who have less of a platform to air their concerns? And isn't the issue here that how can
this is exactly the point.
How can backbench MPs though then have any outlet to raise their concerns if senior MPs just say there is no bullying here and we will not investigate it?
No, so two things here. You're right. We have to always be aware of power, and that is why there was an intervention made with Govt because his staff members were raising concerns about his management within the office. And I don't need to speak to those, and nor will I. It's not my job to speak on behalf of employees, but you've seen one of those speak out subsequently. So that is why this happened in the first place, because we take seriously the issue of the power imbalance in these relationships, and because we want to make sure that we have the best possible working environment. The second point I was making is we have points of escalation for MPs. If they disagree with the whips, who are actually MPs just like them, they have the ability to raise it with me or within their caucus. Neither of those things happened. Yes, a staff member of mine had it raised with them in December of last year. They thought the issue was resolved. So there are ways to come and raise these issues. And the third point of escalation is that actually in Parliament we've worked very hard to create a conduct commissioner. Ultimately, the driver of that was more about the MP-staff relationship more than MP to MP, but regardless, that will give us an additional outlet. And I'm looking forward to that being established because that will help us with issues like this in the future. But a disagreement on how to resolve an issue does not necessarily mean that it is a substantiated claim of bullying. Will I go back and always look at process? Absolutely. Will I look at ways that we can improve? Absolutely. But that does not mean that I will let untested allegations about others to be made without pushing back when they're unable to, when they haven't been substantiated.
In terms of process, want to look at changes in the National Party actually, and screening processes, new screening processes they are bringing in. This, of course, in the wake of the Sam Uffindell saga. Current MPs as well as new candidates are going to have to go through a new screening process to declare any previous indiscretions. We heard from Christopher Luxon at the weekend that the worst thing he'd done that he had to declare was drive in a bus lane and get a $60 fine. Yourself?
Oh, well, you should keep in mind here, and I don't know that this is necessarily a fair comparison. I'm the daughter of a policeman, so that probably just changed the nature of my upbringing fundamentally. So yeah, I've had fines before for parking and things like that. But again, as I say, daughter of a policeman. It's not a fair comparison.
Will you be changing the screening process for Labour MPs, or have you asked people to put their hands up?
We do have screening processes as well, so we have those in place, and they've continued to improve over there. I've been in Parliament now for 14 years. I do think actually all of our processes have improved over time. They will never be perfect, but we do need to keep making sure that we do put in place as many protections as possible to make sure that we elect the best possible people, but they also reflect their communities.
Prime Minister, just quickly too, we had just had the Ukrainian ambassador in studio. What is the latest in terms of your plans to go and visit President Zelensky?
So look, I currently, whilst I wouldn't rule it out, I currently have no travel plans into Ukraine. I do, however, have plans for New Zealand to continue to contribute, as we have done. You know, when you compare New Zealand's contribution to other like-mindeds, we've made a significant contribution, and I think that's far more meaningful than a visit from me. We'll in fact have a bit more to say on our next stage of support this afternoon.
Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us on AM.